I think that it's I mean, these partitions were subcontinental events that change the very fabric of society, and yet in um, each country highlights certain bits and deliberately obfuscates other bits.
Mhm.
So in Bangladesh, 71 is very much highlighted, and every child will go to school and learn about 1971 and separating off from Pakistan. But as Troy Chatterjee mentions, like somehow 1947 gets lost in the process and is kind of, briefly mentioned in a paragraph. I think in the same way, I think in India, you hear so much about the India-Pakistan partition, um, and you hear about the partition in the West, that, for example, the fact that this affected the entire country is very rarely highlighted. You chat to any of your South Indian friends, and they will say, "Oh, partition, it didn't really affect us," and like it was only when I went to North that I realized how much it affected them. And yet, Hyderabad state saw three times more migration to Pakistan. The region that's now basically Telangana, Karnataka, and Maharashtra. So three times more migration to Pakistan, and the exodus of three times more people than were displaced in the Palestinian. And we think of how politicized the Palestinian Nakba is today, and we think about the fact that that migration is virtually entirely forgotten, the
Mhm.
Hyderabad one, Um, and then, when you hear about Burma, you hear about the relocation of half of the Burma's Indian community, and not half, huge proportion to Tamil Nadu.
Mhm.
Um, and yet again, kind of, there's this sense in Tamil Nadu that, oh no, we were not affected by these borders, which is bollocks. Uh, um, it's completely untrue.
Mhm.
So I think, and then Britain itself, I think, has complete. I mean, it's getting better, but it used to have, in my childhood, complete amnesia about empire, etc. And like it's only recently that they put in, uh, like courses for GCSE students and Key Stage 3 students that they have to learn about independence movement in India, etc.
Mhm.
Like until recently, there was no mention of partition in the British curriculum.
Mhm.
Now there is. And that's an amazing change that I've seen since I started Project Astan. They began, in 2018, there was the beginnings of a lobby to try and get it included in the curriculum. Now it's an optional module. And so it's not everyone. Like, I mean, I think everyone at a certain point will come across it, but like there are whole modules on it now for 12-year-olds, which is amazing. Amazing
Mhm.
change. Um, I think it's complex. I think that the way that Indian nationalism began to form was it used as its frame of reference the idea of Bharatvash, which is an idea that dates back all the way to the Mahabharata 2,500 years ago. It's a very ancient concept. But it's not the concept of, British India was not formed on the basis of Bharatvash. British India was formed on the basis of British conquest, you know? But Indian nationalists wanted to create a nation on that basis, and that was an image of a nation that didn't have space for places like um, Burma and Arabia. Um, Now, I think the Arabian states have likewise been just as, I mean, if not more complicit in basically making sure that these connections are forgotten. Um, you chat to the average person from Dubai, like the Emirati or kind of Bahraini or Kuwaiti, and they will be shocked to hear all this fact that their country almost became part of India, and that's to do with in the Gulf, the relationship uh with Britain is remembered, and they remember being kind of protectorates of Britain. But I think, given the class reversal in the Gulf, and given the fact that quite a lot of the time today Indians go over there as kind of servants or working class or that kind of thing, uh, it makes and there's this push against basically talking about the fact that these were the lowest ranking princely states in the book. Sarojini Naidu, who is arguably the most important woman in the independence movement, and somehow still that hasn't had a biography about her since the 70s or something. I think a new one's in the works by some scholars, but she's someone who deserves a lot more airtime, and her letters are hilarious. She sounds like she would be all of our best friends if she was alive today. Do you know what I mean? Like she's this kind of society auntie who is with the most kind of like incisive comments that are absolutely brutal to everyone, but is just like the biggest ball of fun at the same time. And like all so many of these characters come across as very dry politicians or bureaucrats, etc. And Sarojini Naidu feels like someone I want at my dinner table. If that makes sense. She sounds like that. Like if I was to pick one person from the whole book who I'd want to have dinner with and have a chat, like it would be Sarojini easily. She is, and like I wasn't expecting to be giggling as I was reading her letters to her daughter or her letters to Nehru or Jinnah or Gandhi. She's brilliant. I think that we're living in a time where the memories of how these borders got created is disappearing because it's no longer in lived memory. Um, People who remember a time before, before the creation of India and Pakistan is disappearing. The fact that we had Trump saying, India and Pakistan have been fighting for thousands of years, maybe more than that. And of course, your grandma remembers the time when they were one country, um, and remembers a time before the enemy was the enemy. Um, and I think that across the globe, we're seeing resurgent nationalism and resurgent borders. Um, and I think that to some extent we need to analyze nationalism with the same candor that we often give imperialism, like as in nationalism is obviously infinitely better than imperialism, but nationalism has led to a huge amount of bloodshed and a huge amount of division. Um, and I think as we disappear from a globalized age and go back into an era of nationalisms, I think South Asia's multiple partitions are a dire warning of what's to come.